Hello, everyone. I have the honor of introducing a mentor of mine and a good friend, Pastor and Reverend Terrance Thomas. Terrance Thomas has received a bachelor's in inner city studies in sociology from the Northeastern Illinois University in 2002, a Master of Divinity with a concentration in African American church leadership and spiritual care from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in 2017. He is also working on a Doctor of Ministries in Pastor Leadership and Community Engagement with the completion date of December 2026. He has also served 11 years as a chaplain with Carl and OSF hospitals. And with that, I would like to introduce Reverend Pastor Terrance Thomas.
Good morning. That was so robust. I would like to thank you all for this wonderful invitation to, sorry about that. That was going to make y'all life hard, well, my wife's life hard, because then I was going to have to do this off the top of my head. And wasn't. She always insists that I put a PowerPoint together because she don't trust me. My name is Reverend Terrance Thomas. I am the pastor of Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Champaign. It is Champaign County's oldest African American and, parenthetically, the blackest church in the county. What does that mean? That means that we are situated in liberation theology. It means that we believe that God is on the side of the oppressed. We are open and affirming. That means that we honor the African in us. We honor the blackness. So if you ever walk through Bethel, there are no white Jesuses, no white angels, no white apostles, none of that, because we believe all of that has given space to white supremacy. One thing that Michael left out that I think is pivotal to why I'm here is, and then thank you to Brother Benjamin, is that I am a 2023 fellow, John Robert Lewis Fellow with the Faith and Politics Institute, which means that I spent a year with various clergy and politicians and businessmen studying the life and example of John Lewis, and not only John Lewis, but the entirety of this space and time we call the civil rights movement. Before I begin, I have to acknowledge my beautiful wife, Reverend Alexis Wilson Thomas, who is here, and so she's also my unofficial timekeeper, so no matter what the timekeeper says, this is who I'm looking at, all right? So she's gonna tell me to wrap it up. This morning, I want us to talk about, I struggle with this presentation, not because I was equipped, but I think we've made something of a caricature of John Lewis. I think John Lewis has become the safe civil rights icon that we like. He makes us comfortable. I mean, after all, he stood up against Farrakhan in the Million Man March. After all, he speaks out against things. After all, John Lewis was the one that went from activist to congressman, and he said, get into good trouble. And I think we've sanitized the hell out of his legacy and the legacy of the civil rights movement. Now, if this was a different context, I'd talk about some of the ways in which John Lewis himself created this narrative and sanitized by the way he handled some of his colleagues after the movement, the way he treated Andrew Young and the way he treated Whitney Bond and the way he treated all of them, that matters. But we're not going to do that this morning. But this entire narrative did frame my presentation. So I want us this morning to reflect on a theme beyond good trouble. I don't want us to situate ourselves in that slogan, let's get into good trouble. I want us to think, what do we need to do beyond good trouble? What the freedom movement still has to teach us. Because John Lewis wasn't a man in a vacuum. He wasn't the civil rights Batman. But he was part of a larger movement that shaped and molded him, even in the tough moments that we'll talk about. I need to invest in the clicker. You win again. So we talked about who I was. We talked a little bit about my background. So let's get into it today. So this morning we're going to talk a little thing about monuments versus movements. We're going to talk about what John Lewis's life still has to teach us. We're going to talk about the danger of safe memory. And then I'm going to introduce y'all to a little African proverb and the little African concept of Sankofa, recovered, not just to remember, but to recover that what was lost. And then I'm going to leave you all with a challenge, because we didn't just come out this morning on this beautiful Saturday morning when we could have been eating steak and eggs and doing a whole bunch of other stuff and not leave to be challenged. So the central question this morning is, what happens when movements become monuments? What happens when movements become monuments? Here we see before us the monument of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington, D.C. And I remember being a fellow as I walked through this monument. They didn't have nary a quote of Dr. King past 1964. And for those of you who may know history, you know that's when Dr. King dropped his best work. Once the Southern Civil Rights Movement ended, and then he went into human rights, and he began to talk about capitalism and war. In fact, despite what we keep saying, he wasn't murdered for our right to vote. He was murdered for a living wage. But yet, when you walk through this monument, there is no memory or trace of that Martin Luther King. It literally is as if he stopped existing and living after March on Washington in '63. And so we celebrate courage, right? Dr. King, no doubt, was courageous, but we forget the organizations that propped him up, that held his arm up. We remember the speeches, right? We all probably know the I Have a Dream speech, but we forget the strategies that undergirded that moment. We honor heroes, but we overlook movements. We love our icons. And so when history becomes simplified, when it becomes compressed into a name, a photograph, a quotation, it loses its most essential truth. It loses the fact that freedom was never the product of an individual genius. It was the product of organized, disciplined, sacrificial communities. Simplification flatters us. Simplification allows us to cosplay as leaders in community engagement. Simplification allows us to put on the banner without doing the work. It suggests that courage is all we need, but movements knew better. All right, we live in a country that loves heroes. We love to talk about Rosa Parks, the woman who refused to give up her seat. We remember it as spontaneous. One day she was just tired. She was tired, and then that old white man came and said, "I want to sit down." And she said, no, not today. But what we don't know is she was trained in the AME church. What we don't know is she was trained at the Highlander Folk School under Septima Clark. What we don't know was this was actually the third or fourth attempt at that. What we don't know and talk about is that Rosa wasn't just a moment, a person. She was part of a larger movement. Of course, I talked about Dr. King. We love Dr. King. In fact, Dr. King is sort of kind of a complex figure for progressive black preachers, because people love Dr. King in that rhyming, time, and voice, but when you don't act like King or how they perceive King act, then they get mad. You should be more like Dr. King. I am. I'm calling you out. No, not like that. I mean the Dr. King that had a dream. I am. I'm calling you out. And of course, John Lewis, the conscience of the Congress, remembered for his courage on the bridge, less often for the movement infrastructure that shaped and sustained him. So we love our heroes. We love, for men, we love our superheroes. For women, we love our Disney princesses. We love the myth of the fairy tale. And that does not bring liberation. The John Lewis we remember. Let's talk about John Lewis. He was a distinguished congressman. Yes, he was. Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, author of Good Trouble, moral icon of partisan administration. John Lewis worked with everybody. He worked with the Klan in Congress. He worked with the Socialist Democrats. He worked with everybody. That's how we remember him. The John Lewis America celebrates is wise, respected, and critically safe. He has been preserved in amber, the elder statesman, the beloved conscience, the man whose name graces legislation and airport terminals. This is a true portrait, but it's incomplete. This is John Lewis at the end of his career. It's an incomplete memory, and an incomplete memory is his own form of betrayal. So if we're going to talk about John Lewis this morning, we're going to talk about John Lewis this morning. So the John Lewis we forget. The John Lewis we forget. We forget that at 23 years old, he left American Baptist College, moved over to Fisk University, partnered up with a young lady by the name of Diane Nash, we'll talk about that in a minute, and became a freedom rider. Freedom rides, that movement to desegregate interstate travel. That was the Greyhound bus he was on that was bombed. The freedom rides. My son is on a civil rights pilgrimage now, and they're going to the bus station when they pulled up. And John Lewis and Jim Webb and all of them were jumped at 23 years old. I remember being 23. Getting beat up by a bunch of Klansmen was not on my bingo card. He became chairman of the Student National Coordinating Committee, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It would later become national. He was elected at an age where most was finishing college. For those who don't know, SNCC was Ella Baker's contribution to the movement. Ella Baker got a bunch of young students in the room, about 60, and said, y'all can't be the mini arm of the movement. Y'all got to have y'all own thing. And so they formed SNCC. And he was arrested over 40 times, over and over and over, before he became famous, before he became celebrated. And John Lewis did not become courageous on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He arrived there because a movement had already shaped him. So that movement, that picture we see, and then when we talk about that bravery, that moment we lift up, John Lewis had already been doing these things. And so the Edmund Pettus Bridge was in fact the zenith of that moment. Oh. Let's talk about who made John Lewis. Behind every celebrated name stands a community of builders whose name history rarely learns. John Lewis was surrounded. He was formed by extraordinary people who ain't got their monuments yet. Diane Nash, south side of Chicago sister, went down to Nashville, and with John Lewis led the Nashville sit-ins that desegregated Nashville, one of the first major victories of the civil rights movement. Ella Baker said, we don't need leaders. In fact, she would be appalled that we were sitting here honoring John Lewis. And I'm not knocking the event, I'm just giving you Ella Baker's belief. She would say, this should be a community. What is the community doing? So Ella Baker believed in decentralized leadership. She believed in breaking down the barriers of sexism. Ella Baker trained John Lewis and said, listen, it's bigger than you. It's bigger than these young folks. Ella Baker was the one who negotiated the meeting between Malcolm X and SNCC during the Selma campaign, in which Malcolm X showed up to Selma and said, y'all got a choice. Y'all talk to these folk or you talk to me. And he said, we'll talk to them. Bob Moses, he led voter registration drive in the most dangerous terrain in America, deep South Mississippi. James Lawson was the trainer. He was like Septima Clark. He trained him. He guided him. He molded him. They had classes. They had lessons. They would gather on a Saturday like this and have mock protests in which one person would be the sit-in and the rest of the group would beat them up, and they taught them how to respond and how to deal with it. And of course, I mentioned Septima Clark, the mother of the movement. Everybody who was somebody sat in her Highland Freedom School. Everybody who was somebody sat in her Highland Freedom School. And so when we talk about good trouble, and if we're going to talk about the movement and what does it mean for us today, it is important that we do not make these people lionize them. It's important that we don't make them symbols of comfort, but in fact, we also look and say, who created them? Who made it so that when he shows up in Edmund Pettus, when he shows up in Congress, when he shows up in these things, he's already ready to fight. And I would argue more than him, you need to look at these people so you can do what he did. Am I making sense? Let's talk about one of the things that helped the freedom movement. Freedom was not improvised, it was taught, it was practiced, it was rehearsed. And one of the lessons I think that freedom movements need today is that spontaneousness, it has its place, but it does not sustain movements. Emotionalism, it has its place, but it does not sustain movements. The crafty slogans and the feel-good moments, they have their place, no doubt, but they don't sustain movements because all of those things are grounded in feelings. And when feelings lift, motivation goes, strength grows, energy grows. Have any of you ever been angry? Let me talk to the husbands. Fellas, we've been mad about something. And tomorrow, I'm going to cuss that boss out. I'm going to go in that office, and I'm going to tell that son of a something, that son of a, I'm so sick. And your wife say, let's get something to eat and sit down. And then by the morning, you over it. Right, your emotions have changed, and then you realize, I don't know if I'm going to cuss my boss out. I kind of like my mortgage. I kind of like my house. I don't really have a backup plan. When you were younger, you're finna go do something, and your mom say, take a breath. Let's think about this. Let's strategize around it. Let's think of a long-term plan, because when you ain't mad no more, and that's what we see, and that's the frustration we feel with a lot of movements today. We have these hyper-emotional, these wonderful rallies and gatherings, but we don't have any sustain. So when the needle doesn't move, or the thing is over, we still living in an America run by Donald Trump. We still living under Confederate occupation. I don't use Nazi because I think that lets us off the hook. We're living under Confederate occupation because when our emotions abate, and so the civil rights movement understood this, that you just can't be mad about segregation. You just can't be mad about how people are done. You just can't be mad. Certainly we have to be angry, but we need something else. And so they would talk about that. So let's talk about freedom had a curriculum. It was taught, it was practiced, it was rehearsed. The movement built intentional structures of education and formation, places where ordinary people were prepared to do extraordinary things. So they did it through freedom schools. They got them babies. When we talk about Freedom Summer, they decided they were going to go down to Mississippi and show black folks a different way of living. And at the same time, show white liberals to confront their comfort. This is what you're really fighting. This is where it gets ugly. They had citizenship schools that they taught literacy and civic participation to disenfranchised community. They had nonviolence workshops, and this gets tricky because they certainly taught the practice of nonviolence resistance, but they also had a component that taught self-defense. And I ain't talking fighting back, but how do we get this brother out of here when it's 15 people? That's a form of self-defense. How do we get him out of here safely? How do we treat rooms? How do we deal with the aftermath? They would spend weeks and months before they sat down at a lunch counter, before they got on a bus. They were strategic, and in our microwave society, we want the songs of the revolution and we want the victory, but we've not sent anybody through basic training. So we're sending lambs to the slaughter. They had mass meetings and political education. They came together, they shared analysis, they shared language, they shared commitment. And so they didn't just feel courage, they cultivated in each other. So Brother Michael would come to a meeting and we would talk about what it means to be a liberation pastor. And he would ask questions, and I would do a presentation and open it up to questions and answers. And then the next week, we would talk about something else and how that ties in. And then we would go around and continually do this political education. And when we talk about what we see today, I don't see a lot of political education. When was the last time we talked about the Supreme Court issue? There's only one organization I know that's really doing this work in Butu and barely supported. When do we talk about the implications and what does it mean? What does this law mean? What does it mean? How do we go out there and protest? Because right now, this has disrupted the art of protesting. Everybody's looking for their viral moment. And this ain't protesting. This is documentation, but this ain't protesting. And so the movement understood that transformation required formation. You don't simply decide to face a billy cub. You don't wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to let Jim Clark hit me upside the head. You do wake up one morning and say, segregation got to end. Jim Clark is probably going to hit me in the head. So how do we prepare for that? Let's talk about a little hard context. And those who know me know I was going to throw this in there. Your movement needs some kind of spiritual or ethical undergirding. I'm not asking you all to be Christians. This is not a proselytizing moment. I don't proselytize. What you do in the privacy of your home, that's between you and the God you serve. But your movement needs something bigger than you. An ethical core, a moral core. For the civil rights movement, it was the black church. While not everybody in the movement was a part of the black church, it is dishonest to say it did not come out of the black church. And so all the things I talked about, the freedom schools, the community centers, the political classrooms, all of this came out of the black church. The mutual aid society, all of this came out of the black church. The organizing base, all of this came out of the black church. So when we talk about honoring the legacy of John Lewis, I'm asking you, do you honor the black church in your space? Now, next time y'all invite me, I'll tell you the difference between the black church and churches with black people in it. But what I'm saying is, because there is a difference. Ask me afterwards when the camera ain't recording, I'll give you examples of black churches. I don't want to put undivided. It's literally in the name. They're trying to be indivisible. I don't want to come in here and be divisible. But there is a difference. And so how you treat the black clergy in your space says a lot. How you treat people that believe, how you say a lot. You want to know why black folks struggle in spaces like this is because faith is central to us. And we often find that faith is frowned upon. We often find that faith is looked at as a weakness, but in fact, it's the core strength. So if you ever want to know why we can't get no older black folks, why we can't get black folks in here, first thing I'm going to ask you is what's your relationship to their faith? Because if they think you're attacking their faith, whatever it is, but especially they Jesus, then you got it. So ain't nobody asking you to believe in Jesus, but asking, can you respect what they respect enough? Let me illustrate the point. One of the things that derailed Bernie Sanders is how he dealt with old Southern black Christian folk. We can be mad about it. We can hate the argument. But the minute him and the Burrows start talking down to grandmamas, start talking down to good church folk, they was like, oh, we ain't got to do this. We're going to go over here to Hillary. Because at least she know how to honor our faith. And so when the polls came out and voting came out, in them stadiums that had 50,000 people, but you had 3,000 votes, I always point back to the minute you did that was the minute you lost. And so if you want black folks to ride with you, if you want black folks on these movements, you got to honor the faith, whatever that faith construct is. I heard some deep breaths. I can't wait for the question to answer on that. I'm a chaplain by trade. I watch body language and everything. Y'all start beatboxing and huffing. They thought they was making an album back there. Now, this is where it gets fun. Living movements disagree. In 1966, something fun happens. Somebody, real quick, what happens in 1966? What shifts the zeitgeist of the movement? Close. Stokely Carmichael, Willie Ricks, at James Meredith March on Free says, we're no longer concerned with freedom now. We want black power. And those two words changed because the response was just what y'all gave. What? Wait, power? I thought we were talking about freedom. Why y'all want power now? I'm confused. John Lewis struggled with the concept because at the time it was not fully fleshed out. And so in a contentious meeting one night in 1966, he was voted out of the leadership of SNCC. And it was taken over by one Stokely Carmichael. If you talk to the people in the room, one of the biggest things they lament is that they didn't have a healing circle or some form of healing afterwards. John Lewis took his ball and went over to SCLC. SNCC took their ball, went one way. The good white folks said that they didn't sign up for no black power, so they took their ball and went and started fighting for Vietnam. This is all history and all documented. And they never got into a room to discuss. So everybody fell into this trap of ideological purity. We see it now. Those who know me know I have no problem saying that I have zero patience for the Gaza folks. Because what you did, at least as a black man in North America, is you asked me to trade the rise of the Confederacy for a foreign war. What you did was you brought the damn Confederacy back because you was mad about something else. And because you have privilege, because the Confederacy will never fully eradicate you, you never counted the implications. So if I can get personal for a minute, me and my wife are going through a very public/private IVF cycle, and now we're fighting legislation and insurance because the Confederacy say that ain't God-given, you can't have a baby. So you're telling me that what happened over here is more important than what's in front of me when all politics are local. But we can't get into a room and have these conversations. And so we are repeating the mistakes. Our local Democrats, we stay fighting over the most frivolous of things. And if you don't think the White Walkers are coming from beyond the wall, they are. The Unit 4 school board was their test. They won that thoroughly. And so movements will disagree, but can we come into a space to find the common theme? This is where Malcolm X was going at the end of his life, and why when people try to draw the dichotomy between King and X, and actually they end up closer in the middle at the end of their lives than they were apart, this is where Malcolm X was saying, listen, the particulars will work out, but do we believe in freedom, justice, equality? Do we believe in everybody living their best life? What can we tangibly agree on? In the church world, we would call that ecumenical. Listen, I don't care how you believe. Do you believe in Jesus? Okay, you cool with me, come on. And so movements disagree, but that's how they flourish and thrive. Even in the early days of the civil rights movement, it went from, we just want a more humane form of segregation to, no, we want equal access under the law. No, we think we want to be able to go to the park too. No, we think we want that. And there were disagreements about that. But can you disagree and still understand that at the end of the day, our goal is to defeat the Confederacy? Healthy movements adapt. Strategy must respond to the movement, not cling to the past. And so when we talk about some of us in here were frustrated that people were critical of the No Kings protest, and it wasn't the fact that people were protesting, it was the fact that, is that an effective strategy, or is that a cathartic moment to make you feel good? If it's a cathartic moment to make you feel good, absolutely, but let's not be dismayed or dissuaded or dishonest about its impact. Because the president got on TV and then mocked all of us. So can the movement adapt? What else do we have? So we study, one of the things I realized recently, and I fought with some of my elders, is that TikTok, the Reels, the social media that we keep rejecting is where the right wing has found this incubus, it has found this petri dish, and it is growing. And it is slowly starting to impact Black Americans. So now we got some foolishness, Black foundational American, and that we all Native Americans, and that the Democrats really hate us, and that Donald Trump wants to save us. You will never see that. You will never see that in the spaces like this, but all you got to do is sit on TikTok for 20 minutes. And the sad part is once you watch one, it changes your algorithm, don't it? And now I can't get them Negroes off my algorithm, and I've been trying for months. I done started looking at hunting shows. I done started looking at cooking shows. I watch cartoons, and I still got some dude talking about, we not African, we from Indians and this, and then the Democrat. And then I cuss and my wife said, get out, and then she take my phone for the day. But are we still clinging to strategies of the past? Because we've created this romanticized version of the civil rights movement. So if we all take to the streets and have this mass conflict, then the people will see and then, oh my God, they'll change. Yeah, but we ain't had no political education. Yeah, we ain't sat down and hashed this thing out. Yeah, we ain't had the hard conversations. So how the hell are we gonna take to the street? And healthy movements grow. It moves beyond your echo chamber. One of my colleagues in the fellowship was a diehard John Lewis cat. I'm about the middle. And at the end, we finally came to a point, was like, man, I'm glad we had this year together. Because I understand you better, and you understand me better. And now Rod is one of my cool peoples, man. We text all the time. Because healthy movements grow. And so until we have these hard conversations left of center and get off of our ideological purity bullshit, you can be ideologically committed, yes. But if you're really, really, really gambling with the lives of Black folk, brown folk, same gender loving folk, because you just that don't like the damn Democrats, then man, we got a problem. Because you get to walk away from this thing and we don't. When heroes become safe, have we remembered John Lewis or a version of him that asks less of us? So we admire the safe hero. We remember the safe hero. We celebrate the safe hero. It becomes individual, and it becomes an inspiration. But a living movement asks us to appreciate your admiration, but go on in here and participate. Become a part of something. I don't care what it is. Organize. It's 5 of y'all to think the same thing. Put something together. Sacrifice. To my white allies, what are you willing to give up for freedom? This y'all season. We have been fighting the Confederacy since we got here. So yes, we'll be there when you need us. But 5 years ago when we were begging y'all to have hard conversations at Thanksgiving and tell your uncle he's a racist, it might make Thanksgiving a little uncomfortable when we asked you to tell your best friend to stop posting racist meme on Facebook, and then we chose to have breadsticks at Olive Garden, and we chose to try to understand Charlie Kirk's perspective. Now we're here because you can never understand evil. That's an old Aesop fable. No matter what you do, the wolf's still gonna eat you. When we were begging for this, we were told, no, that's unfair, that's harsh. I remember sitting in the Bible study and we were talking about this, and lady got mad. Everybody who supports Trump isn't a racist. My uncle is a good man. He just thinks the government is trying to take his farm. So the response to the government taking his farm is to hate black people and gays? I'm confused. How does it make sense for me? Because I don't want you to lose your farm, but siding with the dude that's going to kill everybody to protect your farm, because he still ain't going to protect your farm. Because the Confederacy eats everything up. So what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to lose your spot in the Rotary? Are you willing to give up your country club membership? Are you willing to donate to a black organization? Can you stand on the side of liberation? Can you be in community and not center yourself? There's a local Democratic politician that always got to center himself in black shit, man. Sorry. I'm so sorry. It came out. I promise you. Time out. Don't time out. It just came out. My bad. Time in. I'm sorry. No, my bad, for real. It just came. Okay. In transformation, why are we doing all of this? Why are we doing all of this? To feel good? To say we were out there? Or do we want to make the world a better place? The moment we've been talking about, I won't spend too long on here, is the Sankofa moment. It's not wrong to go back and fetch what has been forgotten. And so in this moment, my invitation is for us, when we talk about John Lewis, when we talk about the civil rights movement, when we talk about these things, we also have to look at them in totality of the timeline. So when we talk about John Lewis, you got to look at the whole civil rights movement. I know Congressman John Lewis was the old grandfather, uncle that made us feel good, but we also need to learn about young Congressman John Lewis. I know old grandfather John Lewis made us feel good, especially the way he kept checking Minister Farrakhan, but we also need to go look at that he was friends with some folks that put Farrakhan to shame. I know we think that movements are spontaneous, and I know in this microwave era that we don't have the patience for long drawn out battle and the time is nigh, and yes, all of that's true, but we still got to organize and get back to an organizing tradition that has tangible goals, tangible outcomes, a strategy, bail money, mutual aid society. So if you asking my wife to be out there protesting with you, then I need to know what's the bail fund. What happens when my job finds out and they fire me? Which one of y'all gonna hire us? Because I still like going to Martha's Vineyard. So are we willing to go back and reclaim the movement so we can recreate the movement in modern context? So what must we recover? Political education. I'm down that hill. Everybody needs to be doing some form of political education. So this is a form of political education in a sense, yes, but also throughout the year. So all of these groups should be doing something. And stop hiding behind we tax exempt and we 501c3. You ain't got to take a position to talk about voting rights. You ain't got to take a position to talk about what's happening in the latest Supreme Court. You ain't got to take a position or a side to teach people how to fill out petitions properly or how to fill out forms to run for office properly. Hiding behind the fact we're 501c3 and we're nonpartisan is cowardice, because there's so much you can do still. You can still do political education. Ain't nobody telling you got to stand up and say vote for whoever. But you can lay on the table what this party stands for, what this party stands for, and what this party stands for, and let the people make their choice. Freedom schools. We supposed to be supporting freedom schools. Collective leadership. We got to get past we need a speaker, we need one leader. Ella Baker said, listen, you take that person out, we all are gone. We got to start getting serious with the young organizers and mentoring them. There's a lot of young folks out here that want to do the work, but man, they don't know what they're doing. And so instead of becoming frustrated, invite them to a coffee, invite them into a space, teach them. As I said earlier, you got to reconcile that you can't do this work without churches. You just can't. Or synagogues or mosques. You need a faith undercurrent. And mutual aid and organizing, I think I just touched on that in my example. If y'all want folks out here raising hell and doing stuff, then what is your investment in their investment? Or are you just gonna say, oh, Sister Marcy when she got locked up last night, that's a shame. Oh my God, I hope her family's okay. Oh, we just gonna leave her in there? Ain't nobody gonna pay her bail? So mutual aid society. Good trouble was never the mission. Good trouble was never the mission. Good trouble was a function of the mission. Good trouble was one strategy among many, a powerful, costly, courageous strategy, but it was always in service of something larger, the construction of the beloved community. So when we say we want to get in good trouble, that's the tool. What are we getting in good trouble for? Freedom, liberation from every force that diminishes human dignity. The beloved community, Dr. King's vision of a society grounded in love, justice, and reconciliation. And let me be clear about this, because we are abusing the beloved community term. It's not an all-inclusive thing. It's not an all-inclusive thing. And people use it. I'm trying to build a beloved community. Sometimes there are irreconcilable differences. I'll give you a quick illustration. I was invited to sit with some ministers in the community. We went to 2 events. And quickly was like, we don't have the same understanding of Jesus. And then people say, well, we're trying to build a beloved community. I don't know if that's possible when they believe that my existence, my belief, people on my side should be going to hell, should be killed, should be eradicated, should be moved away. We can't build a beloved community. So it's not a catch-all. To be in a beloved community, you have to do reconciliation work. You have to believe in the human dignity. You have to be in alignment. You have to be in all of these things to get into the beloved community. So simply just standing there breathing does not bring you into the beloved community. You got to do work to create a beloved community. We believe in human dignity, the irreducible worth of every person, regardless of race, class, gender, or circumstances. Jesse Jackson said it best, you are somebody. In democracy, government that is truly of, by, and for all the people. You use good trouble to build these things. You use good trouble to create this world. This world isn't created. This world isn't created by that. So, for the time, I'm gonna stop here. What do we need in this county? Because we can talk about John Lewis and his history and legacy, but what do we need in a time such as this? What institutions are we building? Who are today's John Lewises and who is mentoring and creating them? And where's our political education and freedom school? And then I just want to leave us with, don't just remember, we got to go back and recover. Yes, You want to be inspired, but you need to transform. And then lastly, Frantz Fanon, Algerian revolutionary, doctor, freedom fighter. He has a quote that I end all presentations with. Each generation, out of relative obscurity, must discover its mission, fulfill, or betray it. Fanon is asking us, what is we called to do? John Lewis's generation discovered their mission in the fire of Jim Crow. They organized, they marched, they bled, they built, they died. They did not betray the call. So we got the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. We got all of these things and the moral transformation to a point of a nation. Their inheritance is to us. So what is our moment now? That was their moment. What is our moment now? The movement ain't behind us. It still lies ahead, and we're waiting to be built by this generation. So as always, if you got questions, comments, concerns, or critiques, if you pull out your phone, scan the QR code, it'll give you my contact information, and you can send me all your wonderful commentaries and things like that. By my clock, we have 10 minutes. I will open it up to questions, brief comments, brief concerns, because we want everybody to be able to speak. And in my life, I was a former moderator, so I know how to do this. But if you have questions, comments, concerns, we got 10 minutes. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Mm-hmm.
Because they share some ideological core principle with you. That doesn't mean that they're going to have your back on that. And sometimes it's a betrayal. How you then approach them after that betrayal is happening.
So I think the quickest way, and we can talk a little bit after, is just by asking, hey, what made you vote for the guy that said you had no rights? And I think just naming it and having a conversation and then trying to see if there's a reconcilable point to that. White women at great numbers did vote for Donald Trump. There's a reason for that. And so in many sense, they decided that class and race trump gender. And the only way you're gonna get to that is by addressing it. But I found that our side of the aisle, moderate, left of center, we operate in niceties. And niceties don't really build answers. So I don't want to ask that. I don't want to bring that up. No, I want to know why you did that. So, and I'm also not afraid to terminate the friendship. So I see on Facebook, politics shouldn't destroy friendships, opinion shouldn't destroy friendships. That's a lie. An opinion is, I like pineapples and spinach on pizza. And you're wrong if you don't. I don't think that trans children should be forced into conversion camps. That's not an opinion, right? And so I think that we also got to be willing to lose. It goes back into the sacrifice. So you've been my lifelong friend. My brother and I talk. We have lifelong friends we cut off because they post things like Michelle Obama's a tranny. We good, man. Great memories, love you. Remember that time at the ball? But as an adult male who knows better, I can't roll with you. So we got to be willing to cut losses. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to hear you talk about the contradiction between survivalist democracy and ideological purity. Oh, okay. The contradiction or the tension maybe between ideological purity and survivalist democracy. I thought I caught a reference to your criticism of people who didn't vote for
Kamala Harris?
Yeah, Harris, because of her failure to condemn genocide in Gaza. Is that correct?
Yes. So let me do it this way. Is Gaza safe? Is Gaza free? have the Palestinian people achieved freedom, justice, and liberation under the Trump administration? In fact, is it safe to say it's gotten worse? So when we talk about looking at this thing from a realistic, there's one thing Henry Kissinger said that probably made the most sense. When we look at this thing from a realistic analysis, it was ludicrous to think that the Confederacy was going to care more about Palestinian people than the black woman who was part Indian. Would have been perfect under her administration? Absolutely not, because it's still the machine. But then what you're saying to your neighbors and people over here is you're saying that because the Trump administration and that side of the aisle believes in certain things. And so, for example, police can do what they want. So you're telling us, right, your black brothers and sisters, your brown brothers and sisters, that Gaza and what's happening over there, as tragic as it is way more important than the hell that you're going to experience on this side for reasons. So when we talk about harm reduction, and left of center folks have this bad, and I'm guilty of it too. And so one of the things I appreciate about who I married is because she'll say, in a minute in an argument, you're just being a purist right now. When you're ready to have a real conversation and see all sides, then we can talk. But right now, you just want what you want. What you say? I can't hear it. Somebody saying something in the background. So it is a critique. Now, is that the sum of the whole? No. So I don't blame that whole contingency on the fact that we got Donald Trump. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump's election was a white backlash of unheralded proportions. We should have saw this coming in 2008. The truth is, we didn't see it, we didn't prepare for it. We thought the first time was a fluke. I mean, Hillary won the popular vote. We know how that played out, but we did not prepare. And so when COVID exposed, people couldn't ignore Trump, they put Biden back in office. But the fact of the matter is, that was a white backlash. But we cannot say, and we cannot deny that on our side of the aisle, we bloodied each other up over an issue that, while important, didn't trump the lives of the folks over here. Yeah. Anyone else?
If you just ask us to do one thing, what would that be?
In the most inner city vernacular, get y'all peoples. Get your people. No, I mean in your family. In your family. So what that means is these are the folks in your circle. So I'll go back to the Thanksgiving example. You're sitting around Thanksgiving, and I'm using real life tangible examples because this is what happens. And somebody says something like Black Lives Matter is ran by George Soros and they're communists. And you know good and dang on well that that's not true. Do you pause and say, oh, Leroy, that ain't true. Where you get that from? Let's open this beer and talk about it. Or do you say, I'm so uncomfortable when they said that, I just didn't know what to do. When you see Unit 4, y'all witnessed these two black women getting beat up and abused and insulted. But did any of your personal spaces, did you say, hey, what's the real issue here? Hey, maybe we should do something different. How can we do this? Is it okay to call Gianna Baker an angry woman in public? Like, is it okay to say these things? Did we challenge our friends and our loved ones? So when my childhood friend who we're talking about started sending my brother these things about Michelle Obama, the first couple of times we ignored it. That's baby. He ain't graduate high school. That's okay. But then I think one day me and my brother both snapped. And I think it was his wedding day. It was like, man, he trying to get married and you over here talking about Michelle Obama's a man. Shut the blah, 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 blah up. Yeah, it was his wedding day because we standing around and he trying to talk about how Trump is great. And on the damn wedding day, bro, so we snatched him up. And then when he kept doing it, we pushed him away. So now he said, man, I miss my homies. I don't know, man. Until you read a book with footnotes, we can't. But our childhood friendship, our lifelong friendship with Day does not trump the harm he's doing. And so your favorite Cali uncle that might have given you $1 every day of your life Yeah, you know he a Klansman, and you got to say something about that. You know that they wrong. You got to say something about that. Get your people. That's my one ask. Yes?
What if your family is okay and you already stopped talking to all the people What if your family's okay and you already stopped talking to the people that aren't okay? And then who do you talk to or what work do you do?
Now, you create a support group for other folks like you, so then y'all teach other people to be brave. It's always something you can be doing. So the bravery that you had, this young lady might be wrestling with. 1 minute, we're done. She might be wrestling with it. Mentor her and teach her. I think that's my time. Thank you all so much for this wonderful opportunity.